Welcome in, everybody. We're diving deep today into
hmm
a situation that's unfolding in Baltimore, in the Station East neighborhood.
hmm
And it all has to do with a real estate transaction.
Mm.
It's got people asking some questions about transparency.
Yeah.
We're talking about a formal complaint filed with the Maryland Real Estate Commission and an email from a concerned resident.
Okay.
You ready to get into it?
Absolutely. This is going to be a fascinating one for sure.
Okay, so first things first, let's set the scene right. Station East.
Yeah.
It's a neighborhood that has seen a lot of positive changes in the past few years.
hmm
There's been a big push for revitalization there.
Yeah.
And we've got community organizations like the historic East Baltimore Community Action Coalition.
HEDCC.
That's right, HEBC Act, the city, and Johns Hopkins University,
Wow.
all working together.
That's great.
Yeah, and one of the key goals of all these revitalization efforts was to create affordable homeownership opportunities.
So making homeownership a reality for more people.
Exactly, that's the idea. But now we're seeing claims that some of those efforts might not have been as transparent as they should have been.
Okay.
And the confusion seems to center around something called the Historic Tax Credit Agreement
All right.
that was presented to buyers.
Yeah, that agreement was supposed to help make these homes more affordable through tax benefits.
So it sounds good in theory.
Yeah, it does.
But one buyer, Nicholas Miles, had a very different experience than what he was expecting.
I see.
So let's walk through it. What happened?
Well, initially, Nicholas thought this tax credit was going to be around $5,000.
Okay.
Sounds pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But it turns out it wasn't that simple at all.
Okay.
He said the real estate agent for Station East told him that this agreement was non-negotiable.
Okay.
But then when his home was appraised, the appraisal didn't show any kind of financial incentive related to that tax credit.
So wait, hold on. He was told he was getting this tax break,
Yeah,
but it wasn't actually factored into the value of his home.
exactly.
That seems a little off.
Yeah.
Very off.
Yeah,
And that's a big concern, right? Buying a home is a huge decision for most people.
absolutely.
And those details matter a lot.
100%. And then to make things even more complicated,
Yeah.
a second tax credit enters the picture.
Oh.
This one is called the Maryland Historical Trust Tax Credit.
Oh.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Things get even more complicated.
Yeah. So at the closing, Nicholas was given a completed application for this Maryland Historical Trust tax credit.
Uh-huh.
But get this, it was actually incomplete. He was told to sign it anyway.
Wow.
And that HEB would take care of finishing it up.
Correct.
And they would even give him an accountant to help with his taxes.
That's a little suspicious.
Right. It sounds almost too good to be true. And here's the real kicker.
Okay.
The estimated amount for this Maryland Historical Trust tax credit was way higher than what that initial historic tax credit agreement implied.
Oh, wow.
So the question is, why wasn't this larger credit amount, this more significant detail,
Right.
disclosed up front?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
It really makes you wonder what the motivation was for not being transparent about this much larger tax credit.
Absolutely.
And to add another layer of complexity to all of this,
Okay.
Nicholas claims he was repeatedly told that this tax credit wouldn't be considered income on his taxes,
Interesting.
which just so happens to completely contradict what's clearly stated on the Maryland Historical Trust website.
So there's conflicting information being given out.
Yeah, potentially. That's a major red flag.
Yeah.
What are the consequences for a homeowner in this kind of situation?
Well, there are quite a few. They could actually lose that entire tax credit
Wow.
if they make certain renovations to their homes
Okay.
within 5 years of buying it.
So even after jumping through all these hoops and signing these agreements,
Right.
they could still lose the benefit.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a possibility.
That's wild. And on top of that, it's not even entirely clear what they consider to be disqualifying work.
It's really vague.
Right. Nicholas says he was never given access to the statement of work that outlines the historical elements of his property that need to be preserved.
Oh, wow.
So he's being asked to sign an agreement without really even knowing what he's agreeing to.
That's essentially what he's claiming.
That's a problem. And this really highlights the potential for misunderstanding and, even exploitation
Absolutely.
in these kinds of situations.
That's a lot to take in.
So we've got Nicholas feeling misled and confused, but he's not the only one. Another Station East resident, James Clark, also emailed HEB-SAC with concerns about how this Maryland Historical Trust tax credit was handled.
Okay, so what happened with him?
Well, James was led to believe that the discounted purchase price of his home already included the benefit from tax credits.
So he thought he had gotten the benefit already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then he later realized that might not be the case.
Oh, no.
He did some research and found out that that didn't seem to line up with how the program was actually supposed to work.
Mm.
He even emailed the HBC board requesting that the money be returned to him.
Wow. He went straight to the source.
Yeah, he did. So is this intentional misleading or just a bunch of miscommunications?
That is the million-dollar question.
I know, right? Was there a deliberate attempt to mislead these buyers about where that tax credit money was going?
Yeah.
Or was it just poor communication,
Mm-hmm.
a lack of transparency?
That's what we need to figure out.
Okay, so we've got two residents who feel like they weren't given the full story.
Yeah.
But this complaint that Nicholas filed goes even further.
Okay.
It claims that the real estate agent misled other Station East residents about this historic tax credit agreement.
And this is where we start to see a pattern.
Yeah, and the complaint outlines several examples of residents who are given different and possibly misleading explanations about this program.
Like what kinds of explanations?
Well, for example, one resident, Julian Smith,
Okay.
claims he was told he wouldn't be able to afford a home in Station East without signing that historic tax credit agreement.
Oh, wow. So it was like a requirement.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And then we've got another resident, Stephanie Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
who claims she was totally unaware of this agreement until after she closed on her property.
So she didn't even have a chance to understand what she was signing.
It doesn't seem like it. And then there's Shauna Fredericks,
Okay.
who was told that the money from this historic tax credit would be used for community development projects.
Oh, interesting.
So now there are all these different explanations floating around about who benefits from this tax credit.
Right.
Incredibly confusing for anyone trying to buy a home in Station East.
Very confusing. It makes you question the consistency and transparency of the information that these potential home buyers were given.
Exactly. So we've got a lot to untangle here. It sounds like there was a serious breakdown in communication.
Yeah, at the very least.
And maybe something even more concerning going on.
Possibly.
So what are your initial thoughts?
Well, real estate transactions can get really complicated.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And these tax credit programs are no exception.
So how do we even begin to make sense of this whole situation?
Right.
How do we figure out what really happened?
Well, first we need to take a closer look at these tax credit programs themselves.
Yeah.
How are they supposed to work?
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And then we can dig into the possible consequences for the homeowners who might not have understood the agreements they signed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We also need to think about the ethical and legal implications of these allegations.
Right. Because if people were intentionally misled, that's a huge problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next up, we're going to dive deeper into how these tax credit programs actually work.
Sounds good.
And we'll explore the potential impact all of this is having on the homeowners in Station East. Stay tuned, because this deep dive is just getting started.
It's just really troubling, that these tax credit programs are supposed to be, beneficial
Right.
for both the homeowners and the community.
Okay, so help me understand how that's supposed to work.
So the whole idea is to encourage rehabilitation of these historic properties, but also make homeownership more accessible.
Okay.
So it's like you're getting a discount on this amazing historic home,
Yeah.
but in exchange, you're agreeing to keep up with, the historical aspects of it.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Okay.
But then when you have, a lack of transparency or even worse manipulation,
Right.
it just undermines the entire purpose.
And then it has all these consequences for the homeowners.
Exactly.
Right. It's like, imagine being so excited to finally become a homeowner.
Yeah.
You think you're getting this great benefit,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on you find out that you don't even qualify.
Or you could lose it.
Yeah. Or that you could lose it because of something you do to your home.
Exactly. It's a tough situation.
Absolutely. And it seems like that's what happened in Station East.
Yeah.
We've got multiple residents who say they received different explanations about this tax credit.
Right. Different information for different people.
Some were told one thing and others were told something completely different.
It's concerning for sure. That lack of consistency is a big red flag.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So let's say I was in Nicholas Miles's shoes.
Yeah.
What could I have done to protect myself?
What should any home buyer be doing to protect themselves?
Exactly. What should I be looking out for?
That's a great question, and it's something every potential homeowner should be asking. First and foremost, you have to review all those documents before
Yeah.
you sign anything.
Right.
Ideally, have an attorney or a financial advisor look over everything with you.
Makes sense.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
No.
If anything seems unclear or confusing, you've got to clarify it.
You're not just signing a rental agreement. This is a huge deal.
Exactly. And don't just rely on what the real estate agent or the developer is telling you.
Okay.
Do your own research.
Mhm.
There's so much information available online through government agencies, even community organizations.
So true. Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
So,
Especially when it comes to real estate. And I guess if something feels off or it just doesn't seem right, you should get a second opinion.
100%. You
Yeah.
can even just walk away from the whole deal.
Yeah, trust your gut.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about how important it is to be informed and ask questions,
Mhm.
but let's zoom out for a second.
Mhm.
What does this whole situation tell us about the need for accountability
Yeah.
and ethical behavior in these community development projects?
Right.
Because these projects often involve public funds,
They do.
and they're meant to help those in need.
That's the point. It's a crucial point. Transparency and integrity have to be at the forefront,
Absolutely.
especially with these types of initiatives.
Right, and if there are even hints of misleading practices or lack of transparency,
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be taken very seriously.
It does, and it has to be investigated properly.
People need to be held accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we have to make sure that these programs are actually accomplishing what they set out to do,
That's right.
that they're truly benefiting the communities.
That's what it's all about.
Okay, so now we've explored these tax credits and how complicated they can be.
Yeah, definitely.
We've talked about clear communication and transparency and accountability. But this situation in Station East also has this human element to it.
Oh, absolutely. It
Yeah.
does. At the heart of all this, you have people who were so excited about owning their own homes. They
Mm.
trusted the people involved.
Right.
And they had dreams tied to these homes.
It's kind of heartbreaking to think that those dreams might have been jeopardized,
Yeah.
that their trust was misplaced.
It is a really good reminder that these real estate transactions are about more than just the property itself.
That's true.
We're talking about people's lives,
Right.
their hopes for the future.
Yeah.
And when that trust is broken,
Mm-hmm.
it impacts everyone.
Exactly. So what steps can we take to kind of address these issues?
Yeah.
How do we ensure that these programs help people
Mm.
and don't leave them feeling taken advantage of?
Well, for one, we have to strengthen those consumer protection laws.
Yeah.
And the regulations that go with them.
Okay.
We have to make it much harder for these unethical actors
Uh-huh.
to take advantage of people who are just trying to become homeowners.
Absolutely.
What else can we do?
We need to empower the residents,
Okay.
give them the knowledge and information they need
Mhm.
so they can make good decisions about their housing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, hold these developers and real estate agents and other professionals accountable.
Mm-hmm.
They need to put the community first.
It sounds like there are a lot of moving pieces to creating a more fair and equitable housing system.
It definitely is a challenge, but it's a challenge worth taking on.
I agree. So as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
what are your big takeaways? What's really sticking with you?
I think the main thing for me is that reminder that things can go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
even with good intentions.
Yeah.
Even with these community development projects that are trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And when things do go wrong, we need to have systems in place to
Mhm.
fix them.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that actually makes me think about how we all need to stay informed and engaged.
Yeah, we can't just assume that these programs are always going to be ethical,
Right, and that they're going to be transparent.
Exactly.
It's like Station East really showed us that these affordable housing programs are so important,
Mm.
but they can also be mishandled.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. It's not just about, just giving people homes.
Right.
You have to make sure they're affordable and that the
Yeah.
whole process is fair
Yeah.
and equitable and, just treat people with respect.
Exactly.
Mm.
And for a lot of people, homeownership is like a path to building wealth,
Yeah, it's a huge step.
right, and achieving financial stability.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have these opportunities that are being manipulated or, just not handled properly,
Yeah,
it has this ripple effect.
it does. It's not just the homeowner that's affected.
Right, it affects their families, their communities, even the economy.
Exactly. It undermines the whole goal of these programs.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Station East, I want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
How do we ensure that programs that are designed to help communities are actually implemented ethically
Mm-hmm.
and transparently? how do we empower the people they're supposed to help?
Right. How do we protect them?
Exactly. How do we make sure they're not being taken advantage of?
That's the million-dollar question.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's not an easy one to answer.
It's not.
But I think we can start by pushing for stronger consumer protections.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right. And we need more transparency from these developers and real estate professionals.
Absolutely.
And we've got to give people the knowledge and resources they need.
So they can make informed decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like we need lawmakers and community organizations and just regular people
Everyone working together.
to step up and make a difference.
Yeah. It's going to take a collective effort.
But I think it's possible. We need to create a system that puts people first.
Absolutely.
People over profit. Yeah, where everyone has a fair chance at owning a home without worrying about being misled or taken advantage of.
That's the goal.
That's a powerful vision and something worth fighting for.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you for joining me on this deep dive.
You're welcome.
I hope you learned something and maybe even feel a little bit inspired.
You too.
Remember, stay informed, ask questions, and never be afraid to speak up for what's right.
Couldn't have said it better myself.